I sat in my brand new $60,000 Audi A6, watching the silver metallic paint gleam under the dealership's bright fluorescent lights. My hands trembled slightly as I positioned my phone to capture the perfect angle. The leather seats still held that intoxicating new car scent, and every surface sparkled with pristine perfection. I typed the caption with deliberate slowness, "Birthday gift to myself." The moment I hit share on Instagram, my phone began buzzing like an angry wasp. Yesterday's conversation with my mother echoed in my mind. "We're having dinner Sunday, bring dessert." No mention of my birthday. Again, for the third consecutive year. As notifications flooded my screen, I realized I had just detonated a bomb in my family's carefully constructed world of denial. 3 days earlier, I had celebrated my 28th birthday in the most pathetic way imaginable. I work as a senior marketing analyst at BioCorp Pharmaceuticals here in Denver, Colorado, where my colleagues actually remember important dates. My cubicle had been decorated with colorful streamers, and my team surprised me with a chocolate cake during our afternoon meeting. Sarah from accounting even bought me a beautiful succulent for my desk. But when 5 o'clock rolled around, I drove home to my empty apartment knowing that not a single member of my family had acknowledged the day. My parents, Carol and David Thompson, live just 20 minutes away in the Highlands neighborhood where I grew up. My sister Emma, 25 years old and perpetually dramatic, still lives in their basement while planning her elaborate wedding. My younger brother Jake, fresh out of community college at 23, rents a studio apartment nearby, but spends most evenings at our childhood home. They all had my birthday marked on their calendars, stored in their phones, written on the kitchen calendar that hangs by the refrigerator. Yet somehow, collectively, they had managed to forget entirely. I spent that evening alone on my couch eating lukewarm General Tso's chicken straight from the container, while binge-watching a Netflix series about successful women in business. The irony wasn't lost on me. My phone remained silent except for automated birthday messages from various apps and subscription services. Even my dentist's office had sent a cheerful email with a cartoon tooth wearing a party hat. The next morning brought the real knife twist. I stopped by my parents' house to drop off some documents my father needed for his substitute teaching paperwork. Through the kitchen window, I could hear my mother's animated voice on the phone with her sister Margaret. "Oh, you should see this dress," she gushed excitedly. $800 for the alterations alone, but Emma looks absolutely stunning. It's worth every penny to see her so happy. $800. I stood frozen on their front porch key halfway to the lock. That was approximately the amount my parents typically spent on birthday gifts for their 3 children combined. The money that should have at least partially acknowledged my existence had instead been poured into Emma's already extravagant wedding preparations. I quietly let myself in through the back door, left the documents on the kitchen counter, and slipped out without announcing my presence. Carol was still rhapsodizing about beadwork and French lace to her sister, completely oblivious to my brief visit. The betrayal felt like a physical weight settling in my chest. For 6 months, Emma's wedding to her boyfriend Travis had consumed every family conversation, every gathering, every spare dollar my parents could scrape together. Her engagement ring shopping trips were documented extensively on the family group chat. Her venue selections were debated with the intensity of a Supreme Court case. Her color scheme preferences were analyzed and reanalyzed until I wanted to throw my phone across the room. Meanwhile, my recent promotion to senior analyst had barely registered as a blip on their radar. The 20% salary increase that came with my new position, mentioned once, briefly acknowledged, then immediately overshadowed by Emma's latest bridal magazine discoveries. The industry recognition I received for developing a new market research protocol met with distracted nods before the conversation inevitably shifted back to centerpieces and dinner menu options. That Friday afternoon, I logged into my banking app and stared at my quarterly bonus notification, $5,000 in additional compensation for exceeding my performance targets. I had originally planned to put this money toward a down payment on a house, maybe something with a small yard where I could plant a garden. But as I sat in my car outside my parents' house, listening to my mother gush about Emma's dress alterations, a different idea began forming. I drove straight to the Mountain View Audi dealership on South Colorado Boulevard. The sleek showroom gleamed under afternoon sunlight, filled with luxury vehicles that represented success, independence, and self-determination. For the first time in days, I felt something other than disappointment coursing through my veins. If my family couldn't be bothered to acknowledge my achievements, perhaps it was time I celebrated them myself in a way that couldn't possibly be ignored. Saturday morning found me back at the Audi dealership dressed in my best professional attire and armed with pre-approval paperwork from my bank. The showroom bustled with weekend shoppers, but my eyes immediately locked onto the silver A6 positioned prominently near the front windows. Its sleek lines and sophisticated profile called to me like a siren song of independence. "Good morning, I'm Robert Chen, and I'd be delighted to help you today." The salesman approached with genuine enthusiasm, his pressed navy suit and warm smile immediately putting me at ease. "I noticed you examining our A6 model. Excellent choice for someone who appreciates both performance and luxury." I introduced myself as Ann Thompson, and Robert's professionalism impressed me as we discussed features and options. The test drive exceeded every expectation. The turbocharged engine responded to my touch with smooth acceleration that made my old Honda Civic feel like a child's toy. The leather-appointed interior wrapped around me like a warm embrace, and the advanced technology made me feel like I was piloting a spacecraft rather than simply driving to work. Back in Robert's office, surrounded by awards for sales excellence and customer satisfaction, we began the paperwork process. He input my information into his computer system with practiced efficiency, occasionally making small talk about Denver's unpredictable weather and the upcoming weekend's forecast. "Thompson," he mused, pausing mid-keystroke. "That name rings a bell. Are you related to David Thompson by any chance?" My pen froze above the financing documents. "Yes, that's my father. How do you know him?" Robert's expression shifted to one of recognition mixed with sympathy. "He was here last Tuesday, actually. Spent about 2 hours examining this exact model, asking detailed questions about engine specifications and safety ratings. Seemed like a really knowledgeable guy. Mentioned he teaches high school science." The revelation hit me like a physical blow. Was he considering purchasing? He was definitely interested, Robert continued carefully. We ran some preliminary numbers, but when I showed him the monthly payment options, his face just fell. $700 a month was outside his budget, especially with his current vehicle trade-in value. He mentioned needing to prioritize other family expenses at the moment. I stared down at the contract in front of me, suddenly understanding the cruel irony of the situation. My father, driving his 12-year-old Honda Civic with its peeling paint and rattling exhaust system, had stood in this very office longing for something beautiful and reliable. His teacher's salary stretched thin by years of supporting our family, and now Emma's wedding expenses couldn't accommodate such a luxury. Yet here I sat, about to purchase the exact vehicle he desired using money I had earned through my own hard work and professional success. The money they didn't even know I possessed because they hadn't bothered to ask about my career advancement or listen when I tried to share my achievements. "I'll take it," I said quietly, signing my name with deliberate precision across every required line. "Full payment up front." Robert's eyebrows rose slightly, but his professional demeanor never wavered. "Excellent choice, Miss Thompson. You're going to absolutely love this vehicle." The financial transfer took less than an hour. My bonus money plus accumulated savings vanished from my checking account, replaced by ownership papers and a set of keys that felt heavier than they should. As Robert walked me through the vehicle's features, one final time explaining the navigation system and Bluetooth connectivity, I felt simultaneously empowered and hollow. I drove off the lot with the sunroof open, cool mountain air rushing through my hair. The car handled like a dream, responding to every subtle movement of the steering wheel with precision that bordered on telepathic. But instead of heading home, I found myself driving toward Red Rocks Park, seeking solitude among the ancient sandstone formations that had always provided me comfort during difficult times. Parking at a scenic overlook, I stepped out and really looked at my purchase for the first time. The afternoon sunlight made the metallic paint shimmer like liquid mercury. Every line of the vehicle spoke of engineering excellence and refined taste. This was what success looked like. This was what happened when someone worked hard, exceeded expectations, and invested in themselves. I pulled out my phone and began taking photographs from multiple angles. The mountains provided a stunning backdrop, and the car looked like something from a luxury magazine advertisement. Each image captured not just an expensive automobile, but a symbol of everything my family failed to recognize about who I had become. The car represented my independence, my professional achievement, my refusal to remain invisible in my own life. As I scrolled through the photos, selecting the perfect one to share, I felt a mixture of satisfaction and sadness that threatened to overwhelm me entirely. Tomorrow I would post this image and watch my family's world shift on its axis. Tonight I would drive home in luxury alone, but no longer forgotten. Sunday evening arrived with the kind of golden sunset that makes Denver look like a postcard. I sat in my living room still processing the weekend's events when I finally decided to share the photo I had taken at Red Rocks. The image was perfect. My silver Audi gleaming against the dramatic backdrop of ancient red sandstone, the Rocky Mountains visible in the distance. I kept the caption simple and devastating, "Birthday gift," to myself. The response was immediate and explosive. Within 3 minutes, my cousin Sarah from Phoenix had commented, "Wait, wasn't your birthday Thursday? This is gorgeous, by the way." Her innocent question lit the fuse on a powder keg I hadn't fully anticipated. Emma's response appeared 7 minutes later, and I could practically hear her shrieking through the screen. "Are you kidding me right now? We're planning something special. How could you do this without telling anyone?" My phone rang before I could even process her comment fully. Carol's name flashed on the caller ID, and I briefly considered letting it go to voicemail. Instead, I answered on the fourth ring with a calm, "Hello, Mom." Anne Elizabeth Thompson. What on earth is going on? Her voice carried that particular sharp edge reserved for moments when she felt her authority was being challenged. Where did you get the money for such an expensive car? Are you in some kind of financial trouble? Did you take out loans you can't afford? The interrogation continued for several minutes with Carol firing questions like a prosecutor, cross-examining a hostile witness. She demanded to know about my credit history, my savings account, balance my monthly expenses, and whether I had consulted anyone before making such a reckless decision. "Mom, I got a promotion 3 months ago," I said quietly when she finally paused for breath. "And I received a substantial bonus for exceeding my performance targets. I can afford this car comfortably." Silence stretched across the phone line for nearly 30 seconds. A promotion? What kind of promotion? Why didn't you tell us about this? I tried to mention it several times, but the conversation always shifted to Emma's wedding plans or Jake's college situation. You didn't seem particularly interested in the details of my career. More silence. Then Carol's voice returned smaller and more uncertain. "Well, you should have been more clear about how significant this was. We had no idea you were making that kind of money now." After ending the call with my mother, I discovered that my phone had been buzzing with additional family communications. Jake had sent a text message. "Mom's freaking out about your car. She thinks you're hiding something serious or got involved with dangerous people. Can you call her back and explain she's driving Dad crazy with worry?" Emma called next, her voice thick with tears that immediately made me suspicious. In our family, Emma's crying had always been weaponized to achieve maximum emotional impact and redirect attention toward herself. "Anne, you completely ruined everything," she sobbed dramatically. "How could you post that picture today of all days? Don't you realize what you've done?" "What exactly have I done, Emma? I bought myself a birthday present and shared a photo on social media. That seems pretty normal to me." "You don't understand. Her crying intensified, complete with theatrical sniffling. "We had everything planned perfectly, and now it's completely destroyed because of your stupid Instagram post." As Emma continued her emotional outpouring, the truth emerged piece by piece. Our family had indeed planned a gathering for Sunday evening. Carol had sent out invitations to extended family members, asking everyone to come for dinner to celebrate Anne's birthday, since they had missed the actual date. But Emma's tears revealed something far more sinister. The party wasn't actually for my belated birthday celebration at all. It was an elaborate cover story designed to gather the family together so Emma could announce her engagement to Travis in a surprise reveal. They planned to use my forgotten birthday as convenient camouflage for assembling everyone without arousing suspicion about Emma's real agenda. Travis was going to propose during dessert, Emma wailed. "We had it all choreographed. He was going to stand up and make a toast about family being the most important thing and then get down on one knee right there in front of everyone. It was going to be so romantic and memorable." The full scope of their betrayal crashed over me like an avalanche. My birthday hadn't just been forgotten, it had been appropriated as a prop in someone else's romantic theater. The family dinner invitation that Carol had mentioned wasn't an attempt to rectify their oversight. It was a cynical exploitation of their neglect, using my disappointment as cover for Emma's moment of triumph. "But now everyone knows your birthday was actually Thursday," Emma continued between sobs. "Sarah's comment exposed everything. Everyone's going to realize we were lying about the reason for the party. Travis's proposal will look fake and manipulative instead of spontaneous and heartfelt." I sank into my couch cushions, staring at my phone screen where family members continued commenting on my Instagram post. Uncle Bill from Colorado Springs had written, "Beautiful car, honey. Hope you had a wonderful birthday on Thursday." Aunt Margaret added, "So proud of your success. That Audi is absolutely stunning. Sensi de quais antint." Each comment drove the knife deeper into Emma's carefully orchestrated deception. My family's social media followers were inadvertently exposing the lie that my birthday celebration was happening on Sunday instead of the previous Thursday. Emma's surprise engagement announcement was collapsing under the weight of their own dishonesty about the party's true purpose. As I listened to Emma's increasingly frantic explanations, I realized that my simple Instagram post had accidentally destroyed something far more elaborate than I had imagined. Their plan hadn't just involved forgetting my birthday. It had required actively exploiting that forgetting for someone else's benefit. The betrayal was more calculated and cruel than simple neglect. It was deliberate manipulation disguised as family togetherness. My silver Audi gleaming in that Red Rocks photograph had become an accidental weapon of truth that dismantled their web of lies with surgical precision. Monday morning brought a group text message that made my blood pressure spike before I had even finished my first cup of coffee. Carol's message was brief and commanding. "Family meeting Tuesday 7 p.m. sharp, kitchen table. We need to discuss your behavior and this situation immediately." The word behavior stung particularly deeply. After 28 years of being the responsible daughter, the one who never caused drama or demanded attention, I was suddenly the family problem that required intervention and correction. My successful career, my financial independence, my simple desire to celebrate my own achievements had somehow transformed me into the villain in their narrative. Tuesday evening arrived gray and drizzly, typical November weather that matched my mood perfectly. I drove my new Audi through familiar neighborhood streets, parking in the driveway I had grown up running across thousands of times. The house looked smaller than I remembered its beige siding and modest front porch, suddenly seeming tired and worn compared to the sleek luxury I now commanded. I entered through the front door to find the entire family assembled around the old oak kitchen table, along with one unexpected addition. Grandmother Helen sat in the chair usually reserved for Jake, her 74-year-old frame dressed in her best navy cardigan and pearls. Her presence immediately elevated the seriousness of this gathering from family squabble to formal tribunal. Grandmother Helen rarely involved herself in our family conflicts, preferring to maintain her role as the wise matriarch who stayed above petty disputes. Seeing her stern expression and folded hands, I knew this conversation was going to be more significant than a simple discussion about my car purchase. Carol began the proceedings with the efficiency of a prosecutor delivering opening statements. Anne, we're all concerned about this secretive behavior and your decision to make such a major purchase without consulting anyone in the family. This kind of showing off is completely out of character for you. David nodded gravely from his position at the head of the table. We're worried that you might be making poor financial decisions or trying to keep up with some kind of lifestyle that's beyond your means. That car costs more than I make in an entire year of substitute teaching. The irony of his statement wasn't lost on me. My father, who had stood in that same dealership longing for the identical vehicle but unable to afford it, was now lecturing me about financial responsibility for actually purchasing what he could only dream about owning. Emma sat directly across from me, her eyes still puffy from crying, but her expression now hardened into righteous indignation. Do you have any idea how embarrassing this has been? Travis's parents follow me on Instagram, and they saw all the comments about your real birthday. Now they think our whole family lies about everything. Jake attempted to play his usual role as the family mediator. Look, I think we're all just surprised by how suddenly this happened. Maybe we can work through this calmly and figure out a way forward that makes everyone comfortable. But his diplomatic efforts were clearly just another attempt to minimize my feelings while protecting Emma's wounded pride. Even his attempts at fairness were transparently biased toward maintaining family harmony at my expense. The conversation continued in circles for nearly 20 minutes, with various family members expressing their disappointment, confusion, and concern about my attitude problem and secretive behavior. I sat quietly listening to them debate my character and motivations as if I weren't present in the room. Then Grandmother Helen spoke for the first time since I had arrived. Before we continue this discussion, she said in her clear, measured voice that still carried traces of her Minnesota accent, I believe Anne deserves to know about the wedding fund. The room fell silent. Carol's face went pale and David shifted uncomfortably in his chair. Emma looked confused, clearly unaware of whatever revelation was about to unfold. What wedding fund? I asked quietly, though something in my grandmother's expression told me I wouldn't like the answer. Helen's weathered hands folded more tightly in her lap. For the past 3 years, I've been setting aside $200 every month from my Social Security and pension income. I wanted to create a surprise wedding fund for when you eventually got engaged and needed help with expenses. My throat tightened as she continued. The account now contains over $7,000. I plan to present it to you as a gift when you found someone special and decided to get married. That's wonderful, Grandma. I said softly, though her serious expression told me there was more to this story. Last month, your parents approached me with a request. Helen continued, her voice growing firmer. They explained that Emma's wedding expenses were becoming overwhelming, and they were struggling to provide the kind of celebration she deserved. Carol looked like she wanted to interrupt, but Helen's raised hand silenced her immediately. They convinced me that you were too focused on your career to think seriously about marriage anytime soon. They suggested that Emma needed the money more urgently and that I could always start saving again for your eventual wedding fund. Helen's voice carried deep sadness now. They promised that this would remain our secret and that you would never need to know about the transfer. The betrayal hit me like a physical blow to the chest. Not only had my parents forgotten my birthday and appropriated it for Emma's engagement announcement, but they had also actively convinced my own grandmother to redirect money she had saved specifically for my future happiness. $7,000. I repeated numbly. You gave Emma $7,000 that you had saved for me. I was wrong to do it, Helen said firmly, looking directly at me. I let your parents convince me that your sister needed help more than you did. I should have trusted my original instinct and kept that money for its intended purpose. Emma's face had gone white as the implications sank in. Travis, her boyfriend, was already concerned about wedding expenses and had been pressuring her to scale back their plans. This revelation meant that $7,000 of her wedding budget had essentially been stolen from her sister's future. The room remained silent as everyone processed the magnitude of what had just been revealed. My family hadn't just neglected me or forgotten my importance. They had actively conspired to redirect resources, love, and support away from me, towards someone they deemed more deserving of investment. I looked around the table at the faces of people who were supposed to love and support me unconditionally. Instead, I saw a family that had systematically devalued my needs, dismissed my achievements, and manipulated even my grandmother's generosity to benefit someone else. The silver Audi sitting in their driveway suddenly felt like more than just a car. It was proof that I didn't need their recognition or support to create the life I deserved. But it was also evidence of how completely they had underestimated who I had become. I stood up slowly from the kitchen table, my chair scraping against the linoleum floor with a sound that seemed unnaturally loud in the tense silence. For several moments, I simply looked at each family member, processing the full scope of their betrayal, while gathering the courage to reveal truths that would fundamentally change our relationships forever. "Since we're sharing financial secrets tonight," I said calmly, "there are a few things you should know about my contributions to this family." Carol frowned, clearly unprepared for this shift in conversation. "What do you mean, contributions?" I pulled out my phone and opened my banking app, scrolling through 2 years of transaction history that told a story none of them had ever bothered to investigate. "Mom, Dad, do you remember that county assistance program that started paying your property taxes 2 years ago?" David nodded slowly. "The Colorado Homeowner Relief Initiative. We qualified because of my reduced teaching hours and your mother's part-time schedule. It's been a real blessing, saving us about $3,000 annually." "That program doesn't exist," I said quietly. "I've been paying your property taxes anonymously through an online service that makes the payments appear governmental. I noticed you were struggling financially and wanted to help without embarrassing you." The color drained from both my parents' faces as this revelation sank in. Carol opened her mouth to speak, then closed it again without making a sound. "Jake," I continued, turning to my younger brother. "Remember when your community college textbooks were mysteriously covered by that emergency scholarship fund last semester? The one that paid $800 directly to the campus bookstore?" Jake's expression shifted from confusion to dawning realization. "That was you." I called the financial aid office pretending to be an anonymous donor who wanted to help students in specific majors. I provided your student ID number and course schedule, then transferred the money through an educational foundation account I established. Emma had been staring at me throughout these revelations, and now she spoke in a voice barely above a whisper. "Anne, what else?" "Your car insurance deductible after the accident in March," I said, meeting her eyes directly. $1,000 that mysteriously appeared in your account from what you thought was an error correction by the insurance company. Emma's hand flew to her mouth. "Oh my God! I've been quietly supporting this family for 2 years. I continued, my voice gaining strength. "Approximately $12,000 in total assistance, not including the $7,000 that Grandma Helen transferred to your wedding fund. That's nearly $20,000 that has flowed out of my bank account to support people who couldn't even remember my birthday." The mathematics of their neglect hung in the air like smoke. I had been subsidizing their lives while they systematically dismissed my importance and redistributed even my grandmother's love towards someone they deemed more worthy. But here's what's really interesting. I continued, pulling up another set of documents on my phone. 3 weeks ago, I received a job offer from BioCorp's Seattle office, senior marketing director position with a 30% salary increase and full relocation assistance. David's eyebrows shot up. Seattle. That's across the country. I was planning to decline the offer because I wanted to stay near family. I thought maintaining close relationships was more important than career advancement. I scrolled to the email I had drafted but never sent. but circumstances have given me a different perspective on family loyalty. Carol found her voice at last. Anne, you can't be serious about moving to Seattle. We can work through this misunderstanding. It's not a misunderstanding, Mom. It's a pattern that's been going on for years. Emma's needs always come first. Jake's problems always get immediate attention, but my successes are invisible and my contributions are taken for granted. I looked directly at Emma, whose mascara had begun running in dark streaks down her cheeks. I'm accepting the Seattle position. I'll be moving within 6 weeks, which means all the financial support I've been providing will end immediately. 6 weeks. Helen spoke for the first time since her revelation about the wedding fund. And that seems awfully sudden. What's sudden is discovering that my own family has been treating me like an ATM while convincing my grandmother to give away money she saved specifically for my future. I kept my voice level, but the pain underneath was unmistakable. I've been invisible to you for years, so my physical absence shouldn't make much difference. Emma burst into fresh tears. Anne, please don't do this. We can fix everything. I'll pay back every dollar from Grandma's fund. I'll cancel the expensive parts of the wedding. Just please don't leave. This isn't about money, Emma. It's about respect and recognition and being valued as an equal member of this family. Those things can't be purchased or negotiated. Jake leaned forward, desperation clear in his voice. What if we planned a real birthday party for you? A big celebration to make up for what we missed? I shook my head sadly. A forced celebration after public humiliation isn't the same as genuine acknowledgement. You can't fix years of neglect with one apologetic gesture. The room fell silent again as the full implications of my decision settled over them. Without my financial support, my parents would struggle to afford their property taxes and basic expenses. Emma's wedding budget would shrink dramatically without my hidden contributions and the redirected grandmother funds. Jake would face genuine financial pressure for the first time in his adult life. But more than the money, they were losing the daughter and sister who had quietly held their family together while asking for nothing in return except basic recognition and respect. As I gathered my purse and prepared to leave, I looked around the kitchen table one final time. These people had shaped my childhood, taught me important values, and given me countless precious memories. But they had also taught me that love without respect is hollow, and that family loyalty must flow in both directions to sustain itself. My new Audi waited in the driveway, silver paint gleaming under the porch light like a beacon of independence. Tomorrow I would call BioCorp's Human Resources Department and accept their offer. In 6 weeks, I would begin a new chapter of my life surrounded by people who valued my contributions and celebrated my achievements. The girl who had always put family first was finally putting herself first instead. The week following our kitchen table confrontation brought a desperate campaign of damage control that would have been almost comical if it weren't so transparently manipulative. Carol began sending me text messages 3 times daily, alternating between tearful apologies and guilt-laden emotional manipulation designed to make me reconsider my decision to move to Seattle. Monday's message read, "Sweetheart, I haven't been able to sleep since our talk. Your father and I are heartbroken about how we've made you feel. Please give us a chance to make this right." Tuesday brought escalation. I drove past your old elementary school today and remembered how proud I was at your 5th grade graduation. You've always been special to our family, even if we haven't shown it properly. Wednesday's text arrived with photographic evidence. Found this picture of your high school science fair project. You were always so brilliant and independent. We should have celebrated that more. Please don't punish us by moving across the country. The emotional whiplash of these messages revealed everything wrong with my family's communication patterns. Instead of addressing the systemic issues that had led to this crisis, they were treating my legitimate grievances as a temporary emotional outburst that could be soothed with nostalgic memories and superficial affection. David took a different approach, appearing at my apartment Thursday evening without warning or invitation. I found him standing in my hallway when I returned from work, looking older and more defeated than I had ever seen him. "Dad, how long have you been waiting here?" "About an hour," he admitted, shifting his weight from one foot to the other like a nervous teenager. "I was hoping we could talk privately without your mother or siblings around to complicate things." I unlocked my apartment door and gestured for him to enter, though every instinct warned me against engaging in another emotionally exhausting family discussion. David had always been the gentler parent, the one who tried to mediate conflicts rather than escalate them, but his presence felt more desperate than diplomatic. "Anne, I need to tell you something that your mother doesn't want me to share," he began once we were seated in my living room. "We've been struggling financially for longer than we've let on. The property tax payments you've been making anonymously. We knew they weren't from any government program." This revelation stopped me cold. "You knew." "I called the county office 6 months ago to thank them for the assistance, and they had no record of any relief program matching what we'd been receiving. I figured out the payments were coming from a private source, but I couldn't determine who was helping us." David's honesty felt like a small crack in the wall of deception that had surrounded our family relationships. "Why didn't you say anything?" "Because your mother was so relieved to have that burden lifted, and I was too proud to admit we needed help. When I started suspecting it might be you, I didn't want to create an obligation or make you feel pressured to continue." His explanation revealed another layer of the dysfunction that had poisoned our family dynamics. Instead of honest communication about their financial struggles, my parents had chosen to accept anonymous help while maintaining the fiction of their independence. Instead of recognizing and appreciating my assistance, they had preferred the comfortable lie that kept their pride intact. "Dad, I would have helped openly if you had just asked. You didn't need to pretend it was government assistance." "I know that now," he said quietly. But admitting we needed our daughter's financial help felt like failure as parents. We were supposed to be supporting you, not the other way around. Meanwhile, Jake had created a family group chat called Operation Birthday Redo and was frantically trying to organize some kind of elaborate celebration that would supposedly demonstrate their newfound appreciation for my importance. His messages ranged from restaurant reservations to party planning services, each suggestion more expensive and desperate than the last. "What about renting out the private dining room at that steakhouse you like?" he texted. "We could invite everyone and make speeches about how amazing you are. Or we could plan a surprise weekend trip to Aspen family bonding time in the mountains." The absurdity of trying to purchase forgiveness through expensive gestures completely missed the point of why I was hurt in the first place. They still didn't understand that my pain stemmed from years of being overlooked and undervalued, not from a lack of sufficient birthday celebration expenditure. I had begun apartment hunting online, researching Seattle neighborhoods, and calculating moving expenses when my work schedule at BioCorp demanded extra attention. We were launching a new pharmaceutical marketing campaign, and my expertise in data analysis had become crucial to the project's success. The long hours at the office provided a welcome distraction from family drama, and the professional recognition I received from colleagues reminded me why moving to Seattle represented opportunity rather than escape. Thursday evening brought the most surprising development yet. Emma appeared at my apartment door, but instead of her usual dramatic flair, she looked genuinely devastated. Her hair was unwashed, her face bare of makeup, and her clothing suggested she had been crying for hours. "Anne, can I come in? Please, I have something important to tell you." Against my better judgment, I let her inside. Emma collapsed onto my couch and immediately burst into fresh tears, but these seemed different from her typical manipulative displays. Her distress appeared authentic and bone-deep rather than performed for maximum emotional impact. "Travis broke up with me," she said between sobs. 2 days ago. He said he couldn't marry into a family that was financially unstable and emotionally dysfunctional. The news hit me like a physical blow despite my anger toward Emma. Whatever our issues, I had never wanted her relationship to suffer because of our family's problems. "Emma, I'm so sorry. What happened exactly?" After our family meeting, I told him about the car and the money situation because I was still upset and needed someone to talk to. She wiped her nose with a tissue from my coffee table. I mentioned that you were moving to Seattle and taking your financial support with you, and his whole attitude changed immediately. Emma's voice grew smaller as she continued. He started asking detailed questions about family finances that made me uncomfortable, like how much money Dad makes teaching, whether we owned our house outright, what kind of inheritance we might expect from Grandma Helen. The picture she painted was disturbing. Travis hadn't been interested in marrying Emma for her personality values or compatibility. He had been attracted to what he perceived as family wealth and financial security. When I told him about your promotion and salary increase, he got really excited and asked if you might help pay for wedding expenses or contribute to a down payment on a house. Emma's crying intensified. I realized he wasn't thinking about me as his future wife. He was thinking about my family as his financial safety net. What did you tell him? I said you were angry with us and probably wouldn't be contributing anything to our wedding or helping us financially. That's when he said he needed to reevaluate our relationship timeline, and maybe we should take a break to think about long-term compatibility. Emma looked up at me with red, swollen eyes. Anne, I finally understand how you must have felt all these years. Travis was only interested in me because of what he thought my family could provide for him, just like we've only paid attention to you when we needed something from you. Her recognition of the parallel felt like the first genuine insight any family member had demonstrated throughout this entire crisis. For the first time, Emma seemed to grasp that relationships based on utility rather than genuine care inevitably become hollow and painful. I don't want to marry someone who sees me as a transaction, she continued. And I don't want to be the sister who treats you like an ATM machine. But I'm scared that I've ruined everything permanently, and you'll never forgive us. Emma's breakdown revealed something I hadn't expected: genuine remorse and self-awareness. Unlike the desperate bargaining attempts from our parents and Jake's frantic party planning, her pain seemed rooted in understanding rather than panic about losing my financial contributions. Emma, I never wanted your relationship to suffer because of our family issues. But maybe it needed to suffer, she said quietly. If Travis was only interested in marrying me for financial security, then I'm better off knowing that now rather than after we'd signed a marriage license. As I sat across from my sister, watching her process the painful reality of her broken engagement, I realized that my decision to move to Seattle had accidentally exposed truths that needed to be revealed. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is refuse to enable destructive patterns, even when that refusal causes immediate pain. Emma's heartbreak was real, but it was also potentially the beginning of her emotional growth into someone capable of healthier relationships. My family's financial panic was genuine, but it was also an opportunity for them to develop more sustainable and honest approaches to money management. The silver Audi in my parking space represented more than personal achievement. It had become a catalyst for forcing everyone to confront uncomfortable realities about love, money, respect, and the difference between genuine family bonds and convenient exploitation disguised as affection. 2 weeks after Emma's tearful visit, I made a decision that surprised even myself. Instead of immediately accepting the Seattle position, I decided to offer my family one final opportunity to prove that their expressions of remorse represented genuine change rather than temporary panic about losing my financial support. I called a family meeting for Sunday afternoon, but this time I controlled the agenda. We met at a neutral location, the community center conference room near my apartment, rather than our childhood kitchen, where old power dynamics could reassert themselves too easily. I've been thinking carefully about everything that's happened. I began looking at each family member seated around the institutional table, and I've decided to propose a 6-month trial period before I make my final decision about moving to Seattle. Carol's face brightened immediately, but I held up my hand to prevent her from interrupting with premature gratitude. This trial period comes with non-negotiable conditions that will demonstrate whether our family relationships can become healthy and sustainable. I pulled out a written document I had prepared, treating this conversation with the same professional seriousness I would bring to any important business negotiation. First, all future financial assistance from me will be acknowledged openly and appreciated explicitly. No more anonymous payments or fictional government programs. If you need help, ask directly, and if I choose to provide it, you will thank me genuinely. David nodded slowly, understanding the dignity that honest communication would restore to our interactions. Second, my professional achievements and personal milestones will be celebrated equally with Emma's and Jake's. My birthday will be remembered without reminders, my promotions will be acknowledged with enthusiasm, and my life choices will be respected rather than ignored. Emma spoke quietly. Anne, I've already marked your next birthday on my calendar and set phone reminders for the entire week before. Third, we will attend family therapy sessions together to address the favoritism patterns and communication problems that created this crisis. Everyone participates, or the trial period ends immediately. Carol looked uncomfortable with this requirement but didn't voice any objection. Fourth, Grandmother Helen's wedding fund will be returned to its original purpose. $7,000 will be transferred back to an account designated for my future use, whether for a wedding house down payment or any other major life event I choose. Helen had been uncharacteristically quiet throughout this meeting, but now she spoke firmly. Anne, I already initiated that transfer yesterday. The money is back where it belongs, with my deepest apologies for allowing myself to be convinced otherwise. Finally, I continued, Emma will use this experience to reevaluate her priorities and demonstrate that she can build her own life independently, rather than relying on family resources to solve her problems. Emma straightened in her chair. I've already enrolled in the nursing program at Community College of Denver. I start classes next month and I plan to work part-time while studying. I want to build a career like yours, something I can be proud of. Her decision to pursue nursing represented exactly the kind of personal growth that gave me hope for our family's future. Instead of wallowing in her broken engagement or immediately seeking another relationship, Emma was investing in developing skills and independence. Jake had remained silent throughout most of this meeting, but now he cleared his throat nervously. Anne, I want to apologize for always trying to mediate instead of really listening to what you were saying. I realize now that asking you to compromise constantly wasn't fair or helpful. What will you do differently going forward? I'm going to pay attention to family dynamics instead of just trying to keep peace. If I see favoritism or unfairness happening, I'll speak up instead of pretending everything is fine. The changes they described sounded promising, but words had always been easier than consistent action in our family. The real test would be whether these commitments survived the daily pressures and old habit patterns that had created our problems originally. Over the following months, I watched carefully for signs of genuine transformation versus temporary behavior modification motivated by fear of losing me entirely. The results exceeded my cautious expectations. Carol and David began attending weekly therapy sessions with Dr. Patricia Morrison, a family counselor who specialized in addressing favoritism and communication dysfunction. The sessions were sometimes painful, forcing my parents to confront how their own childhood experiences had shaped their parenting choices, but they demonstrated consistent commitment to the process. My birthday 4 months later became a genuine celebration rather than an afterthought. Carol planned a dinner at my favorite restaurant, complete with thoughtful gifts that reflected actual knowledge of my interests and preferences. David gave me a leather portfolio embossed with my initials and filled with articles he had collected about successful women in pharmaceutical marketing. Emma created a photo album documenting my professional achievements that the family had previously overlooked. Most importantly, Jake stepped into his promised role as family dynamic monitor. When conversation at holiday gatherings began heavily favoring Emma's nursing school experiences, he gently redirected attention to include my work projects. When Carol started planning elaborate celebrations for Emma's academic milestones, Jake suggested equally elaborate recognition for my professional accomplishments. Emma's transformation proved the most dramatic. Nursing school challenged her in ways that wedding planning never had, forcing her to develop discipline, empathy, and genuine competence. Her studying schedule left little time for the dramatic emotional outbursts that had previously dominated family gatherings. She began contributing thoughtfully to conversations rather than demanding to be their center. 6 months after our community center meeting, I made my final decision about the Seattle opportunity. BioCorp had graciously extended their offer timeline, understanding that family considerations sometimes require careful navigation. When I finally called their human resources department, it was to politely decline their generous offer. My family had demonstrated that genuine change was possible when people were willing to acknowledge their mistakes and commit to sustained effort rather than quick fixes. The respect and recognition I had always craved finally existed in our relationships, making geographical distance unnecessary. I kept my silver Audi as a permanent reminder of the importance of self-advocacy and the power of refusing to accept treatment that diminishes your worth. Every time I settled into those leather seats, I remembered the woman who had been brave enough to celebrate her own achievements when no one else would. The life lesson that emerged from this painful experience became a guiding principle for all my future relationships. Love without respect is incomplete, and respect must be demonstrated through actions rather than promised through words. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for people is refuse to enable their harmful behavior, even when that refusal causes temporary pain. Family bonds are precious, but they become toxic when they require one person to remain invisible so that others can shine more brightly. True family love celebrates everyone's achievements, acknowledges everyone's contributions, and ensures that no one disappears into the background of other people's stories. My Instagram photo of that Audi had been intended as a simple birthday celebration, but it accidentally became a catalyst for transformation that strengthened our family relationships in ways I had never imagined possible. Sometimes the most powerful changes begin with the smallest acts of self-respect. As I finish sharing this story, I want to ask you something important. Have you ever felt invisible in your own family or friend group? Have you found the courage to advocate for the respect you deserve, even when it felt scary or uncomfortable? Your experiences matter, and I would love to hear how you've navigated similar situations in your own life. Please take a moment to like this video if my story resonated with you, and subscribe to hear more stories about finding your voice and claiming your worth in difficult relationships. Share this with someone who might need to hear that they deserve better treatment from the people who are supposed to love them most. And leave a comment below telling me about a time when you had to stand up for yourself in a family situation. Thank you so much for listening to my journey from forgotten daughter to respected family member. Remember that you have the power to change relationship dynamics by changing how you allow others to treat you. Sometimes the road to genuine love requires walking through temporary conflict, but the destination makes every difficult step worthwhile.